always find something more innovative, what mistake you made in the last day, so you don't repeat next day. You may not be the best, but you should think that you're the best. That takes you there. What is important is not the volume of new startup. However, how we should also improve the quality of startup. Portfolio is always your dynamic profile that has to continue to change and keep up to date to the market trends.
Yeah.
2, 3.
Welcome to Wooble Nexus. I am Akash Jaiswal, your host, and today we have a special guest joining us from the heart of New York City, Mr. Thirupath Yatham, a global senior director at Melissa & Duck. With a wealth of experience in IT leadership, our topic today is the path to leadership excellence, strategies for career growth. Get ready for an insightful journey as we explore strategies for career growth and leadership. Wooble Nexus is your gateway to knowledge, and today's episode is no exception. So, let's dive in. Yatham sir, thank you for giving us your gracious time. We extend our sincere gratitude for your gracious presence. Your willingness to share your extensive expertise ensure that our event will be enriching and enlightening experience for all of us. Thank you for joining us. So we can go ahead.
It's my pleasure being here and being part of your team and discussing this. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's start with a quick icebreaker. If you could have a superpower for a day, what would it be and how would you use it to benefit your work or personal life?
On the work side, if I take two shots, right? On the work side, I've run large transformation projects. Sometimes they take like months and years. If I was a superpower, I could convince all the people who are going to use the products or services, they know exactly what I want to deliver. That's the nirvana, right?
Yeah.
But then I don't have a job because I usually take a year or two to do that. That's one. On the personal side, I think I've got God has given me enough and everything. But on the personal side, every 10 years you look forward, you always look back and say, I should have done something differently.
Yes.
Probably I would have been an entrepreneur, which I couldn't because of family reasons and all that. But that's why I always try to love and work towards and promote entrepreneurs like you, young entrepreneurs like you.
Yes. Thank you so much, sir. So the next question is, imagine you are in a time loop, reliving the same day over and over. What would you do differently each day to make the most of it?
It's up to you to make each day interesting. So even though it's a repeatable process, always find something more innovative, what mistake you made in the last day, so you don't repeat next day. And you learn in the process, try something different. You'll again fail out of one or two things, again relearn that. So that will keep you interesting. So every day will be new, even though you're repeating the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. So if you could magically acquire a new skill or talent overnight, what would it be and how would it enhance your career?
I've done drama, I've done a lot of other soft skills and all. Music is one thing that I couldn't pick up. I started guitar, I left it in few months and all. So picking up music and other things is very calming. That's something that I would do. I've done yoga in the past. I forgot it and I picked it up during pandemic. So among other things, music is one thing probably I would pick up.
Okay. So, sir, since you are currently living in New York, so how relevant is the Indian music? Are your choices still Indian classic song or Indian songs or something Western?
So my music thing is quite broad, although my preference, like food, is always Indian music. But even within Indian music, I listen to Bengali, I listen to Malayali, I have a very wide choice.
So from the regionals as well.
A lot of people don't go regional.
Yeah.
Recently, I started watching Kannadiga songs and music and all that. Even though music is very similar, the variations and how it's being used is different. Of course, my thing is very international. I watch Korean, I watch South American salsa and all that. You know, it's a range. The world of music is very, very broad. So you can
Yes.
enjoy.
Okay. So, as the global senior director of back office technologies, can you provide an overview of your role and specific objectives of the large transformative initiatives you are leading at Melissa and Dow?
So I have the largest IT budget out of Melissa and Doug. I'm responsible for both financial and delivery of and architecture of what we call as a global transformation projects. So Melissa and Doug is almost a 25 plus years company. They have had old systems. We're trying to replace new systems across the board after 25 years because for 20 years we did not grow enough, but last 2 3 years we're growing 20 to 30%, 23, 27%. That type of growth without modern and scalable systems, we will be shooting ourselves in the foot and not able to grow. That means the business cannot grow if the infrastructure is not there. It's no different than putting roads and all that
Yeah.
Modi ji is doing it all, right? So what I'm doing is infrastructure. My role is like all the business application systems with the new technologies that can take us from x times 3 or times 4 and all that in the next 4 to 5 years. And that's the kind of growth the market that we're in. For example, right now we are only in US, we are limited Europe, we are thinking of expanding to Asia, Africa, and so many other countries. We are a knowledge based toy manufacturing company. There's a lot of demand. I go to toy fairs, they say, how come we don't see your product in
Yeah.
India and all that? That is why the transformation program that we are doing is crucial for business. Then I can enable the business so that they can scale it up. So my goal is to facilitate and help the business so that they can increase the
Yeah.
volumes.
So, sir, it is a toy company, ranging particular age. It has its target audience.
So we are a niche toy player. We are a non-electronic, more educational kind of toys. Basically, the incentive is just to increase the brain power, like that kind of stuff. So it's very wooden based, child safe, mostly wood based products. If kids chew it and all that, so
Yeah.
there's no range. It's all the way from like a toddler who's like 3 to 6 months old, which is child safe, all the way to 16 to 18 years. We make like very traditional stuff in India and all. I don't know if you remember, olden days we have to have steel utensils and all that. Girls used to keep a kitchen, make a kitchen
Yeah.
and all that. We have the same
Doctor
concept
set,
in
kitchen set.
doctor set, kitchen set for the boys, like that. The tools, making a house and all that.
Yes.
All that kind of stuff to very simple child products. But these are all IQ based
Yes.
toys. None of them are electronic gaming toys.
Yeah.
Is that not a good thing or a bad thing? Even gaming helps kids, but we are in a different segment where we want to do is a skill development of youth or young child. That's the market we are in.
So, sir, since you are only catering to non-electronic based toys, don't you think that a wider set of audience is being left out, or you think that being on the niche is a bigger game than that?
Being on the niche is a bigger game. We have gone through the cusp of exploring gaming and other things, but now people are realizing that there is a fair balance that we need to strike between devices and non-device type of entertainment. I would even look at like future where it goes to an extreme where I really want to send my child out to play gilli dandal or something like that, which people have forgot, right? Or
Obviously.
cricket or something.
Yes.
So more physical game is either ideally the best one for younger girls, then some kind of a knowledge games, then you go for electronic stuff and all that. So screen time is not bad, but everything is in right proportion, right? You cannot have dal chawal but only eat chawal or dal, whatever you like. Everything has to be like in a right proportion. Your education, entertainment, sports, everything has to have a proportion. So
Yes.
screen time over a period of time, my hope is it'll get limited. Nowadays it's very addictive. Parents are not able to control. When you see the bad outcomes of that, people will start considering. So even though I'm leaving the significant segment, what I'm trying to get to is I'm going to build that segment to use non-electronic based toys with the percentage of time in their individual's life they have to spend on these kind of education toys.
Yes. So, sir, to conclude this from our startup ecosystem, I would say that focusing on a niche product
Yeah.
or a niche target audience is better than grabbing a wider audience. what we startups do a mistake, that once we find a market gap, we try to cater to more audiences so that the chances of conversion increase. So what is the perfect balance, or what is the way to get a perfect balance, that okay, I should be in this niche, or I should increase the features, or maybe to cater to wider number of audience to get more customers?
So it's basically a product mix that you have, right? As you heard about the word product mix. So when you design a product, it could be designed for a niche market, or it could be designed for a broad market, or you could design products which are somewhere like a hybrid mode. So if you have a niche product, the concept is you're selling it to fewer people,
Mm-hmm.
but make sure you're getting higher margins. When
Okay.
you're doing a bulk product,
Mm-hmm.
the same product you can make it as in bulk, low cost and all that. That is a different strategy of marketing. That's for different audience. There, the volume, it's a volume game.
Yeah.
Here, it's a margin game. And a volume game. And sometimes in the product mix, you can have a product that meets somewhere in between, where you can relatively market it to broader audience than the real niche one. For example, I could take a toy. It could be a very toddler-based toy where they can use it from 0 to 3 years.
Yeah.
That is really niche.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to non-electronic segment. It become narrow and non.
Yeah.
But then I can go into a product where even adults can play. We have some of the products where adults can play. For example, like a chessboard or something. It could
Yeah.
go from 6-9 years onwards to
Maybe
60 plus
60,
years,
yeah.
right? So that's a very broad scale kind of thing. So you got, it's a product mix strategy.
Okay. And any specific channel of marketing the company prefers?
Yeah, I mean, today you cannot really avoid using your digital marketing. Everybody talks. But if you take the hype out
Mm-hmm.
and really look at why digital, don't do digital marketing for the heck of digital marketing. I started my career a little bit with finance, and I spent 3-4 years in sales and all that. The way we used to do is we had to go shake hands to market a product.
Yeah.
I was into industrial products and all that. And we did not have the capabilities and technologies that you have today. And a single day, you can reach with the right message and right tools and technologies to thousands of people, where we would have taken more than 5 years to do the same thing. So you have the advantage. That is why your energies have to be focused on how can you reach to larger audience. Now, the other side of the story is, don't just keep blasting things because they need to. You need to be really targeting your audience. You got to be very clear in your marketing strategy and say, these are the 50 segment areas, but my focus is on this 10 segments. What are the digital platforms catering to that? If you feel Instagram is the right thing, do it that way. If you feel Facebook is the right thing, do that way. Social media, using digital platforms or using third-party services, you have to go and Google and say, let me give some money to Google as soon as search-based up to it. So you got to figure out, in digital also, it's a very wide scope. What fits your budget, that's important. What gets you greater bang for the buck, that's important, and all that. So digital market by fair one. Apart from that, obviously going to conferences, shows, and showing the product and all that, that doesn't go
The
away.
toy conferences
The toy conferences we
fairs.
go, actually display our product. We want the kids to actually come, feel and all. Another way we specifically as a toy companies do is very interesting. We actually bring kids to our corporate office. They are our real QA people. When we design toys, the final QA is done by the kids. We feed them, give them chocolates and all that, but they actually come to our design centers and all that. They test it out. This shows the problems and all that. Indirectly, we record all that and then modify these things before we release. We go through multiple release process like that.
So do the kids know that, okay, I have been called to test, or they are just randomly using the...
They kind of know because they come with the parents and all, but
Yeah.
then we give them the toys, access to it, given basic explanation what to do, and we give them an environment which is more like a play areas. We design those play areas. So they are free with what they want to do, how they want to play.
So from this, I can say that we can also take inspiration that we should also bring students into our office to understand how they're using it
Absolutely.
to understand what are the things they are looking for, what buttons they are finding out.
Absolutely. That's the right way. I think I was talking to Archana. Basically, your end user use your
Yeah,
king, right? I mean,
understanding the end user demand.
exact. And give it like incentives. You give them like a 5 rupee, 100 rupees coffee or whatever it is
Yeah.
to incentivize.
Yeah. Okay. So going ahead with the next question, transformation initiatives often involve significant challenges. Could you share some of the key challenges you have encountered and the strategies you have employed to address them in your current role?
So transformation initiatives are always challenging because these are all multi-million dollar initiatives. Right now, my budget is, for example, 18 to 20 million dollars per year. Right. Every dollar I'm spending, that is a money that I'm taking away from business, which they would have used it for other things. Right. So the burden or onus on that is I'm a spender.
Yeah.
Even though I'm adding a value to the organization so that the company can scale up, my CFO or my boss looks at, okay, this guy is spending a lot of money. What is that I'm getting out of $10 million, right? As an example. Everybody. So I should always constantly go back and look at ROI. That's one. If whatever I'm doing, is it giving return on the investment? That's one. What is the long-term, medium-term benefit out of that? During the transformation programs itself, the biggest challenge is usually dealing with people. I usually manage a team of 100 plus people. The machines are the easiest one to deal with. Human beings are the most difficult to deal with, right? You need to get productivity out of them. Every dollar you're spending, constantly monitor them and all that. Trust them is very important. Enable them and say that you can do it. I'm not telling you that I'm watching you every 10 minutes and making sure, why did you go to bathroom 5 times? That's not washroom, right? That's not the kind of concept. Trust the people. You got to see what they're delivering. If they're not delivering to what your KPIs and standard, always measure your performance. Make sure how they're meeting with the measurements. Give the feedback based on that. You're supposed to do 5 calls or whatever, 5 new customers. You haven't done 5 new customers this month. Why not, right? Measure always in the success. Define success and measure it. So those are some of the key things. Always in technology, what I found is change management. This is more on IT side. I may design, define and everything. The new best software, latest software that everybody in the world is using is what I'm giving to my company. If I haven't gone to my business users and convinced them using this software or a solution and all that is how it's going to improve their life or make their life easier, I would fail in my project because I would have spent another $50 million or 2.5 years, 3 years to do this transformation. If they don't use, they're using a spreadsheet to do their work, I've miserably failed and thrown the money under the drain.
Yeah.
So those are some of the challenges. Usually finding the right technology is not a problem because there's so much of technology there. Finding the right people is a little bit challenging, but not as challenging. But most important thing, what I see is change management. Trying to change people's behavior to adapt new things. For example, if you're doing a profile software, people may not be used to it. We are used to paper resume.
Yeah.
You need to convince me from a change management point of view, what is the benefit of getting out of a 3 or 4 pages paper resume into profile based digital way of publishing my profile, right?
Yeah.
That's your job to convince me.
Yes.
If you haven't done that, that means you haven't sold the product to me.
Yes.
As an example. So those are typical challenges. Change management of convincing your end user. Cost is always a little bit of a concern. Less. Keeping your teams motivated. Those are some of 3 or 4 things I would say.
Okay. So, sir, any particular example of challenge that might be, you have faced or maybe solved it in a very easy way?
Yeah, there are many examples. What I've seen is usually we try to solve complicated problems, and often we forget on simple things.
Yeah.
For example, in one project, a big company, I'll name the company, it's called Nordstrom.
Okay.
They had called me telling that this has been one of the first projects of Infosys.
Yeah.
This is 20 plus years back. Infosys was not in business application space. They were a very small company at that time. Nordstrom is a big retailer in US and Seattle. they kept on delaying the project like 3 months, 6 months. This is what we call as a burn rate. Every month you delay, there's losing hundreds of thousands of dollars and all that. They brought me as an independent consultant to say these guys are not understanding what we are looking for, and Infosys thinks we delivered the best technical solution. So I went on behalf of the client, almost an independent consultant. I sat with the business and tried to understand what their problem is. This company has defined very good software, they coded everything, they configured the system to do what they want. But the finance team, Nordstrom, for example, is a company back those days. I don't know what they're doing now. Every 30 minutes in the this is the audio system, they announce the stock price.
Okay.
So they're a very market-driven company. Every 30 minutes they're watching how the stock price is going. I haven't seen with a lot of companies in my clients. That means they're financially prudent and very financially conscious company. All they wanted to do is they wanted almost like 100 plus reports and KPIs to measure whatever they're doing is really meeting their standards.
So they used to announce their market rate, like the share
they
rate.
announce in the market, right? What I'm trying to say from there is they're very financially conscious people. So their finance team wanted to say, I don't care what kind of best accounts receivable or payables or general ledger system and everything that you put in place. What is in it for me? I need to be able to run a report and tell what is my sales for the day. What is my spend for the day? By vendor. I need all kinds of analysis. This is the days before we really knew what we call as more like data analytics or extensive reporting and all that. So they wanted out of the tool real-time data analytics of what's going on in the system. I should be able to see visually through KPIs and through reports, make it simple. So we implemented likes of Infosys. I shouldn't be using company name, but that's okay. It's been more than 20 years. They defined a beautiful system, but nobody could measure what is coming out of it. So understanding or talking to the end user and saying, what is it exactly you're looking
The
out
parameter
of
that they want.
The parameter. Once we talk to them, all we had to do is define like 100 plus reports and all that. Done deal. We took 3 months. We committed for 6 months later, go live. Within 3 months, 2.5 months, we went live. 3 months, money we saved. Customer is happy. We are happy. At a point, whether in team, always listening is very important, and a lot of you guys as management school will you might have heard about it, but it's very difficult to practice. But constantly you need to listen, because you need to that's your feedback loop. As you're getting feedback, you can improve your product. If you're just only trying to pitch without taking the feedback, you're defining your product, not the product for your customer.
Not addressing the problem itself. Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question.
Obviously, sir. With an example as well. So your career in IT leadership spans 15 plus years. Could you share some key strategies or milestones that have contributed to your impressive career growth?
I wish I would have been higher in career, but I'm very satisfied with where I am. I've been in a senior director role for like about 12 years now. I always have a thirst for serving in different industrial segments. That's another thing I got. Always, as I said again, in the leadership, I always found technology or anything like that is easy to manage. And some of you, as you grow in your career, you'll see people are always the difficult part to manage. IT management is all about not being a boss, being part of the team and trying to understand what your team is doing and lead that way. So let me go more specific. As a manager or a director and all that, your job is not to direct, as they keep talking about. Even though I'm a senior director, I'm not a director. I'm an enabler. Basically, if I solve my team's problem, if they get stuck, they don't have money, how do I get the money? They got stuck with a technical issue. They've been struggling for 4 days. If I give them resources or ideas, how they can go through, then they can skip and save money and time and effort and all that. So my job as a leader is I'm an enabler. I use something called as a servant leadership. You
Yeah.
guys can Google it and read about it. I believe in a servant leadership. At the end of the day, I'm a servant to my team.
Yeah.
If I enable them, they are successful. If they are successful, my success is coming automatically. I don't need to
Obviously.
run for the success. That's how it is.
That's great. So, mentorship and guidance are invaluable for career growth. Have you had mentors who influenced your journey, and what advice do you have for finding and benefiting from the right mentors?
Right. So choosing a mentor is not an easy thing, and second is not all mentors are open for to you to one individual to be a mentee, right? Striking that right balance is important.
Yes.
Always don't go for a negative mentor that always will discourage you and say you this is difficult and all that. Or don't go for a mentor who will tell you you're the best or something like that.
Yeah.
You got to have a combination of multiple mentors who are giving realistic, motivational, and all that. So choosing a mentor is an individual's responsibility, that you have a good mix of mentors who can give you all kind of feedback. Mentor is, see, if any country has this concept of it, India is the one, right? For example, we have the concept of gurus and all for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Your mentors are pretty much like your gurus, right? Essentially, what were your gurus doing? You give simple dhan and all that, but essentially they are giving you guidance, they are giving you options. You are the one who is supposed to make the decisions. So your mentors that you have, or if you are mentoring down the line in this thing, you should never give a final solution or answer. If I as a mentor, some of my mentees are CIOs like 2 levels above me or 3 levels above me, CEOs of companies and all, and some of those guys even work 2 levels below me. I'm really happy for them. They grew even better than me, right? So the mentor's job is to enable and give them options, not make a decision for the mentee. That's key. So to answer your question, both mentoring and having mentors is in a scientific this thing we call it as a continuous improvement process, right? It is your life's continuous improvement process, because whoever is mentoring is already telling you from their experiences what they did right, wrong, what their failures were and success was. That means you took a shortcut. I don't have to go through the same experience. I'm already learning. Let me learn the good things out of it and follow that.
Yeah.
Same thing, pass on to the next generation. That is also very traditional Indian culture.
Yeah.
The Indian culture says once you're like 60 years old, you should not be working, right? Basically, you need to retire and train your children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, something. So it's an inbuilt Indian culture. It's built in our system, including a caste system and all, how it is developed. Even though it is abused today, it is more of a workmanship and how the skills have to be delegated, imparted, and all that downstream. There is a very scientific explanation which I can spend a whole day to that. Coming back to mentor and mentorship is very, very important to engage in being a mentor. I usually try to volunteer to be mentor, and sometimes people have seen crazy. Why is this guy asking that he's going to be a mentor? Not that I do that, but during I can suggest. It's always, even if you're a mentor or you're a mentee, it's a two-way relationship. It's a symbiotic relationship. You as a young person, next generation, you're learning faster from my learnings, that I have mistakes and things that I've done. But while you're telling, if I listen carefully, I can learn a lot of things.
Yeah.
Your approach is completely modern and new. I'm stuck in my traditional approach. If I can shed my traditional approach and take your approach and try it, it's probably better. So I learned while doing the mentorship. That's why I encourage everybody to be having mentors. Could be parents, could be relatives, could be professional mentors. Everywhere you should to have a mix. Don't have all your bhaiya, bhavi and dada and all your mentors. No, you should have professional relationship, family mentors, friends as a mentors. Have a nice mix who give you a different feedback.
Yeah.
And within professional or other things also, different type of mentors who are realistic.
Different advices.
Yeah. Try to stay away from very negative mentors, because there's nothing that you can do when you have two negative guys, right? If they're realistic is okay, they should not be demotivating you. You yourself, you will be going through so many scenarios which are already demotivating. Either they have to be motivators or give you pros and cons of what you're doing good and not good and where you can improve. So choosing a mentor is very important.
Yeah. So going ahead with the next question, you already have a lot of experience working with different companies, either it be startup or maybe organized businesses. You have observed the startups in the Silicon Valley. You have been there. You have also seen a lot of startups in India. So what major difference do you think in the belief system of the founders and the investors, that they are able to build the ecosystem in a so robust way, and India is still evolving or still in the process to be something like that? So what is the major difference and what we can learn from it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll get to that. So I really work with very large corporations. I've worked with like $25 billion annual revenue companies like Arrow Electronics and all that. I've worked with very, very small jewelry manufacturers which are like $300 million and all that. So fortunate, even Melissa and Doug is not very big. It's less than $1 billion revenue. So I've worked with a plethora of companies. The structures, the processes based on the size of the organization, they're more structured. Or some of them are very informal. There's a different way. And some of the organizations like very new biotechs where I was part of it, Regeneron Pharmaceuticals is an example. The average employee age was only 27. I had guys in cheddis and all that roaming around the floor. It's like a Google of biotech where they're sitting on coffee places and then designing new medicines and all that. So I was fortunate, the help of God, that I got a mix, right? So to answer your specific thing, the startups and all, I have taken more of a personal interest to be involved because I could help with the knowledge and everything. And also I learn from those processes of the struggling. One of the most difficult area to do is a startup.
Yeah.
The reason being, you're your finance manager, you're your marketing person, right? Or in a small team, you're doing 360-degree thing like whole 9 yards, what we call it as. There is no like if I go to a $20 billion company for one specific task, there is one person or a team doing it. Here it's one person doing like 5 functions, if you will.
Yeah.
Right, business function. That's a challenge. It's a struggle for a couple years, 3 years, which will definitely benefit. More important is always constantly measure periodically, whether it is a monthly, 6 months or whatever it is. Don't let it go for more than a year. Every 6 months you should measure, have a target. Did you meet it or not? Why you didn't meet it? What are the learnings? How can you pivot if it really goes bad? We thought this is the product, but now I want to sell it to LinkedIn or whatever it is. You just go and sell it to LinkedIn if you think it's not there, whatever, right? So that's one. Now the difference between the startups within India and this thing, nothing different. It's the same DNA that all the startups have and all that. It's just the ecosystem, right? It's much more easier to get finance in one area. The ecosystem of knowledge sharing and everything is a little bit more open in like West, for example, New York, California, and all of them. In India, I don't see as much collaboration between entrepreneurs as much if they can collaborate. Third is, in Indian mindset, I have seen that people and entrepreneurs, they would like to do everything for themselves. In today's economy, don't try to completely do 100% of it. If you need to subcontract things out and all that, get that done and all. In one sentence, key is speed to market. You could come out with the best product portfolio, but you come out in 3 years, maybe there are 3 more companies, they've already done it in 1 year ahead of you. And all your sweat and everything. The idea was good. You were the original idea person, but you were late to the market. How fast can you get to the market? That is the critical difference between Silicon Valley versus here. Speed to the market doesn't have to be 100%. In technology term, we call it as a waterfall versus agile methodology. Agile methodology, we call as sprints. Every 2 weeks, we keep doing things and slowly, incrementally improve. Instead of giving you a perfectly finished product at the end of 2 years, which is of no use to you.
Yeah.
By then the market has already moved. the product needs have already moved.
Yeah.
So that methodology is what I find as a difference. Collaboration with other partners, taking help from other people. When I say collaboration, not the fear that, oh, if I tell something, I'm going to lose what I have, something like that, those kind of things. So it's a cultural differences that make it. But as far as knowledge and capability, I don't think, there's no difference. We are actually better capable. I think I was talking to some folks in University of Hyderabad 2 days back. My numbers could be off, but like 1% of US, as an example, is Indian population is about 1%, but we contribute 5 to 7% of the GDP. So it's the same damn brains. We have gone there and doing 5 times better, right? So knowledge, and it's in the DNA, it's in the genes.
Yeah.
We are really smart and very analytical people. We have very, very few, small percentage of the world population is as analytical as Indians. We are a mathematical society or analytical society. It's just that there are a few skills that we need to learn, like customer friendliness and end use and all that. So there are, as I keep telling, customer focus of your product is very important. Not having the most beautiful product that is not used by anybody. I rather have an average product that is used by a few or more.
Yeah.
So there are some cultural differences. If we can learn from Silicon Valley and other focus, okay. The environments there are very, very motivated. You need to meet as entrepreneurs, somehow pump yourself up that you're doing great, and always, if cultural wise, when you look at American, right, the way the American creed is raised is you're the best.
Yeah.
In our things, we are trained to be conservative. So the
Maybe
next
a
generation has
comparison
to
factor
get out of
is
the mindset
there.
telling that you may not be the best, but you should think that you're the best. That takes you there. So the cultural thing and all those things will influence.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. So the first part is we should not compare the children among themselves, and the next thing is when we are starting up as startup now, entrepreneurship has been to a great extent. All of us, or maybe a lot of us, are trying to be their own boss, or maybe they are trying to
Which is really good thing. Yeah.
trying to come into entrepreneurship. So the transition of this is happening in two ways. Either the students who are now graduating or they are about to graduate finds out a good idea and pitches to
Absolutely.
maybe government initiatives, or maybe go to VCs or angel fund investors that, okay, this is my idea, how we can scale it or maybe develop it. And the next way is someone is already in an industry, a particular professional, and he has some idea either from their own industry or some another industry where he or she can improve. They come to build a new product or a service. So what happens is, if the student is coming out of their particular institution and they are giving 100% of them, they have a liability to their parents that, okay, I have to earn a certain amount for the job security, or maybe go ahead with building up the family, like we were talking yesterday with the biological cycle. And the next part is where the professionals are trying to transit from their current job to the profession. They also need a security that till the particular startup doesn't brings up certain amount of revenue, till then I'll do a parallel kind of job. So what is the culture there? Like, is the transition same there, or they focus on single product or a single startup for certain amount of time?
I don't want to generalize, but if I do at a broad strikes, there I see people are a little bit more focused. They dedicate a couple years and all that in a product or group of product related products. They don't jump into 5 different things. That's one. The financial support system is slightly better there. It's easier to convince investors and all that, especially Silicon Valley, or compared to even the other areas. If I compare even with the US, you need a Chicago investor versus Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley, it's easy to get an investment if your idea is right.
Yeah.
The third one is they're very, very methodical and very process oriented. We need to understand clear, the vision has to be very clear, and then the approach of how to get there has to be very clear. Not just jumping because there potentially could be a market demand and all that. Fourth thing, what I see is they do a lot of test marketing, saying the product that I'm trying to do, is it really viable?
Yeah.
Just because my 4 friends said that this is the best idea that somebody has ever come up, you don't go into it. You need to test whether it's viability. So there are those kind of nuances that make that startup community different than here. There, the investors will grill you. Shark Tank is a good example, TV show, if you can sort of see it.
Yeah.
Everybody may not do it like Shark Tank, but that's what it is. Like, for example, I'm linked to some investment organizations and all that. We have organizations by state and all that. We work through. I see people coming and pitching and all that. I see slight differences, but it's great to see the ecosystem, especially in the last 2-3 years, that has grown in India. What is important is not the volume of new startup. However, how we should also improve the quality of startups. And then, biggest thing what I suggest to startups, especially in India, I've talked to so many startups in last even couple weeks. No one has an exit strategy. When do you need to get out? It's like a stock market. You don't get out at a certain time, you'll be burnt. Both time-wise, money-wise. So you should always have like a touch point at a different time and then an exit strategy. So exit strategy is equally important. And you can pivot to a completely different product. You can go to second startup or third startup and all that. So you should have that structured plan.
Exit strategy should always be there since the beginning.
So there I see people have a clear exit strategy. Just one example, which I don't see as much here.
In
if I have
India.
to take a very
Okay. And what do you prefer? Like, if the professional is interested to make their own product or a service as a startup, should they first secure themselves for the next 2 years and then start the startup and take risk, or they should parallelly do both the things until they are successful on the startup?
There
this
is
is your
no
personal-
clear answer for that, but if you really ask me, my personal thing would be, if you have funding, if you can work for a little while and secure some minimum startup money, or you have funding through family or some kind of sources and all that. If you have other sources, reliable sources, don't waste your time, get started fast. The benefit of having some experience and then doing a startup is you already have some experience, you made some money, then you have the maturity to how to handle startup and all that. What I definitely don't want to recommend is a hybrid approach. You continue to work as well as do. I just met a startup guy in another city. He's into aerospace and all that. And I told, because we went with Chandrayaan, that's why you're interested. He said, no sir, I've been with it for 4 or 5 years. Then I said, why are you with something with 4 or 5 years and you have not made any revenue? He said, I'm working on the side, but I'm passionate about this from childhood. That is, I said, you'll be here like that for another 5 years and your product may become irrelevant. So if you're really honest, at a right time, you don't have to be 100% secure. That's why you're an entrepreneur. That's the difference between the salaried guy versus an entrepreneur. When you're 30 to 40% ready, when the iron is hot, you should jump in, cut down your expenses, cut down your lifestyle, gather other sources of funds if possible, parallelly convince you. As I said, you are all in one now as an entrepreneur. You have to convince your investors potentially, you have to convince your customers, you're doing everything, convince your employees that they're in with the right thing and all that. Motivate, that's the biggest thing. Motivating your own team is important, right? So do that. So to answer your question, it's better to, the first ideal option is 100% get in, dive full in. If you're not comfortable, take few years after education and all that, get some basic money and experience and start doing some ideation, land on the product or few products, then go for it. Worst option is trying to run 2 things parallelly. You cannot have in this world more than one wife, you'll be in trouble. You cannot have more than 2 careers at the same time. There's no parallel processing. It's a joke, but that's the reality. Anyway.
Okay. So, sir, currently what India is seeing, there are a lot of entrepreneurs coming out, but this generation will have to prove it that, okay, this is also a secure profession to choose, so that the parents also get convinced. Because currently the maybe the generation is getting convinced, okay, this is a good profession, but the parents need to convince their parents.
Okay, that's where your CEO qualities start.
Yeah.
If you're a real entrepreneur, you should be able to pitching. The most difficult thing is to, depending on your parents, but very difficult thing is to convince the family and parents and all that, because typically parents tend to be conservative.
Yeah.
And
They
they're
want their children to be very safe, very pampered.
That's one, and we are all one generation older also. Our thought processes, we came out through a conservative channel. We expect that if you continue to be conservative, you'll be happy in life. Your thought processes, I'll be happy if I'm successful.
Yeah.
So if I am a parent also, I'm thinking my son has to be happy, not necessarily successful, right?
Yeah.
So it's always a conflict. But your skill before you sell to the customer starts that if you can pitch and convince your parents or whoever is family members,
Yeah.
that's your starting point. That's always the most difficult part.
Yeah.
If you need to create 3 decks to convince your customer, you may have to create 7 decks virtually to convince your parents.
Yeah.
So you need to understand your parents, read the mindset, methodology, what is that they're looking at, how do you make them comfortable, how do you squeeze the money out of them. It's a strategy. You need to, it's a plan.
Yeah.
So that's a good practice to start there. How do I first convince my investors and parents and say, leave me alone for 2 years, give me 1 crore rupees or whatever that is, and then forget about it. I'll get you money back.
So is it the same in Western culture as well, or the parents have
Western
already
culture
been...
is completely different.
Yeah.
After 18 years, I don't give a damn about my son, right?
Yeah.
He's no longer my responsibility. I mean, I'm an American now, so Indian American, my DNA is here, so I'll be behind my son or daughter, whatever it is, right? All of them. But typically West, no, they have much more freedom. They have support system of the network, governments and all much more than
the parents.
Yeah. My children or the parent, they're not even my responsibility. Your thought process is your dad or somebody has to invest into business. My son should not be thinking that my dad has to invest. He has nothing to do. I only gave birth to him, took care of him or her for 18 years. That's it. Tu kon my kon. That's it. You're done. You don't have a place to stay, you can stay in my place. You want free food, you can stay in my place. You don't have a car, you can use my car, my house. It's a different mindset. Here, even though you're successful, you have a lot of ideas and all that, everything is yours. Even you may have money, you still need parents' consent.
Yeah.
It's a completely different mindset.
Yeah.
Even though your parent might have not given a dime to you, they think that they have an authority to coach you on what to do, even though you already made your 2nd crore or 3rd crore in your business. They think they know better than you, even though your parent may be working for 20, 30 years in the same job.
Yeah.
So it's a different cultural mindset. You should not compare to. What is that you can do optimally as an entrepreneur given your environment? That is in operation research we call as variables, right? You have all these variables. How can you be successful based on the variables that you have? Don't copy the Western or African or South American or even Japanese worst case scenario and all that. Different cultures are different. Everybody's entrepreneurship will be successful in a different way.
Yeah.
You are not building a ecosystem in US or Europe or something like that. You're building in India.
Yeah.
So you have to have a different methodology for it.
Yeah. Okay. So, sir, like we are discussing a lot about startups and how they should start or how we need to develop a strategy. Any specific advice for people who are starting up in Odisha right now?
Odisha, I'm really fortunate to come here after 30 years. So I'm also learning. So I cannot really advise you guys. Based on my and I'm seeing a lot of youth, you guys are much more enthusiastic than the older generation, to be honest. Older generation in Orissa is to be extremely corrupt. It is one of the top 2 or 3 corrupt states in India back then when I was operating and all.
30 years back.
30 years back. Very difficult to do business. You have to do 6 or 7 rounds is there in all government and all that. But today's environment, I see it's completely different. Very education centric. Even back those days, a lot of people, very highly educated people used to come out of Orissa, even civil services and all of that. but the number of people who are getting educated are high. So what my recommendation for something like Orissa would be few things, right? There are things that you cannot do. I am expecting probably your leaders and all will create the infrastructure, which I see happening.
Yeah.
They are trying to create the infrastructure, but they're only facilitators. The actual doers are the youth like you guys.
Yeah.
My recommendation there is see what are the resources and talents you have,
Yeah.
and how you can try to slowly bring in the VCs and everything from Bangalore or Hyderabad or Delhi or Bombay and all that, which you don't have access to them. Slowly, how can you start inviting more VCs and all, start showing more interest and all, and start developing your own this thing. Um, Try to do it more locally. Don't depend too much on I don't know the right way to say it, but the suggestion would be look at your strengths. Education is your strength. You have education from all spheres: biotechnology, information technology, chemistry, all of them. So see what are the industries that you need to develop, and then what markets you can capture. Market is global, right?
Yeah.
The guy sitting in New York or Bengaluru or Bhubaneswar, there's no difference. Market is global today with the digital stuff, right? More is who's going to get your work done. Do you have the resources? If not, can you buy them? Are they willing to come to Bhubaneswar, for example, right? If not, start with your local resources. So you understand your strengths, try to leverage them and do that. That's what I would say. But I think you are in a right cusp. You are not a very expensive city at this time. You are not a very inexpensive. So you're in a right balance where you have very highly educated people, less expensive, low iteration rate. Unlike Bangalore, when I'm dealing with a lot of IT companies in Bangalore now. I have like 4 vendors there. Every 3 months, I see a guy switching from one company and another. I see people going to the next door in the same building, next shop for 10,000 rupees more salary, right?
Yeah.
Luckily, you're not in that environment in Orissa. So there are a lot of benefits of being in a more stable society like Orissa. Yeah. So take advantage of that.
Okay. So, sir, going ahead with the next question. In today's competitive job market, how important is having a professional portfolio? Could you elaborate on the elements that make a strong portfolio for professionals?
So when I coach professional, when I do mentorship and all that, and I come from like originally a sales background, in life, whether it's your father or your children or anybody like that, not that I'm not preaching you guys because they're all marketing majors and all that. Life is all about constant selling.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing, whether you like it or not. Always you're selling to your boss or to your employer or parent or whatever it is. Indirectly or directly, that's what you're doing, right? So, sorry, I lost the context of the question.
How important is having a professional portfolio?
Yeah, so from a portfolio point of view, the reason why I brought that up is that has to continue to change and keep up to date to the market trends.
Yeah.
Right? That is why it's how are you selling yourself? Don't get me wrong. Don't take it in the wrong context. Selling myself. Yes, I'm trying to sell because somebody has to pay for me, right?
Yes.
For my services. But how do I keep it up to date, relevant? If it is static, nobody gives a damn.
Yeah.
If I keep it relevant, people will show more interest. I'll get more hits. I don't know how many hits I got on my LinkedIn. Every week I check how many people read my profile, what is that I need to do, and what is actually creating more hits. And by now, last 10 years, I can tell you what are the trends and all that, right? There are a few things that I can do. For example, I can start publishing articles and all that, blah, 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 and all that. Or I can go tag few important people, and when they look at me, that I've tagged in that, somebody's curious about who is this guy commented on that, they look at that. Not that issue. I'm just giving you.
Yeah.
There are so many mechanisms how you can keep your profile active. It is very important.
Yeah.
Tools like what you guys are developing and all that are very comprehensive tools which will enable individuals in that journey to keep them honest.
So, with your experience in application development, what emerging technologies or trends do you believe will shape the future of software development in the coming years?
So that's an interesting question. And all of you might have heard about AI, machine learning, and all that kind of things, right? Um, a lot of technologies are usually get overhyped. You might have heard about blockchain as an example. So many technologies are there. None of the technologies will replace human being, right? Robotics are one thing, blockchains are one thing. I've been in this IT field for 30 plus years and all that. That is not what you need to be feared. What as human beings, what we do is, how can I take the technology, how can I complement with human resource skills and be more productive?
Yeah.
That is the real time.
Yeah.
If somebody can replace me, if they don't need me, I'm not making money, so I'm not going to buy that product. The product will fail anyway.
Yeah.
That is something that I was talking to Akash when I was going towards Puri, right? There always will be like robots are not going to replace humans, because ultimately humans have to pay for the robots anyway, right? So there is always a nice this thing. So the concept is, in my opinion, don't take artificial intelligence and generative artificial intelligence, which is self-learning and all that, lightly. This is the most disruptive technology that we have ever seen. Maybe Americans might have invented the internet and drones and all that. But what you haven't seen is the power of AI. It's like a double-edged sword. You got to use the sword carefully, otherwise it could cut vegetables or your hand.
Yeah.
Depends on what it is. I don't want to use the word fear. I never feared robots. I never feared I use a lot of what we call as robotic process automation with bots and everything. I've used so much of technologies. I'm an avid user of ChatGPT, for example, today. I've used GPT-0, which is a negative of ChatGPT. I try to keep all technologies. It doesn't keep me awake in the nights, but AI, along with generative AI as well as machine learning and self-learning capability, has immense potential, is a trend, it's a changer.
Yeah.
For your generation, every individual, even though with the commerce background, they need to watch what's happening in artificial intelligence technology.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. You haven't seen a technology that is going to be so disruptive, is the word I would call it as, artificial. It will be there in few years in every place that you cannot even imagine.
Yeah. So, sir, the next question is, from your perspective, why is it crucial for students to start building their professional portfolios early in their academic journeys, and how can Wooble facilitate the process?
Absolutely. So as soon as you get out of your high school, if you look at West and all, even the guys in West, even in your high school, like 11th grade, 12th grade and all that, everybody has a profile and resume, which you don't see more in India and all.
Yeah.
Because 16 years, once they're 16 years, they start going and working.
Yeah.
They don't count on the dad or mom's money, unlike what we do, right? So they'll start working at 16.
Yeah.
For that, they need to have a resume. Even if I want to go and cut lawn, they'll need a profile and a resume. So it's inculcated into the DNA.
Yeah.
And then they keep up to date and all that, internships, co-ops and everything like that, then to job and all that. So same thing, culture is going to come here. It's already coming. I've seen very recently, even last week, a 12-year girl coming, pitching her product to me and all that. I was very impressed, right? And she has like said, the only suggestion I had there was, can you give me a profile of what you're trying to do? She didn't have a profile. I said, first is put everything in writing, create what you're trying to do, have a profile, what you want to do. Don't try to do too many things at the same time. See what is one out of the 4 best things you can do.
Yeah.
Have plan A, B, and C. Always have your options. This is my first choice. If it doesn't work out, I'm going to do this. Don't have a list of 10.
Yeah.
But having things in writing, putting it out there, taking a feedback, and constantly updating profiles is very important, because that is your face.
Yeah.
Virtual face. Your physical face is there. But did you put your lipstick? Did you do your eyebrows and all that? Same thing. Did you trim your skill section? When I do a Google search or some kind of a search, are the keywords hitting your profile? All those things are important. So that's why maintaining and designing a profile, because it's a constant seller of you in the market. That's very important.
Yes. Okay. So, sir, one more question. Since you have seen Indian culture and Western culture both altogether, and you have spent a lot of time in the US. So, what is one thing that you like the most there, and what is the one thing you think India should improve?
So, a couple things I can definitely say there is people there are very process oriented. Everything you do, they document and think about in a process, logical manner. There's no more jugaad there. I think I
Yeah.
was telling Akash like yesterday, right? Nothing wrong in jugaad because that's the mindset we come from. But once you reach a stage, everything has to become a repeatable process. If you have done something, take time and effort to make it very process oriented. You give that to somebody else should be able to repeat it. That logical and being a very methodical is very important. In our mindset, we ये काम हो गया बस निकल गया, that's it. After 2 months I may be doing the same thing again. After 4 months I'll come back and do the same thing. No, that's a waste of time.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one. Make it repeatable, make it self-sustaining, make it automated to the extent possible, so that you can move on to better and this thing. So you need to work smart, not work hard.
Yeah.
If you work 7 hours instead of 10 hours, that's fine. If you are getting the same productivity as an example, that's one. That's one difference. Second, what I see there is transparency.
Yeah.
It's a big word. What I'm trying to say is, whether it's your employer, it's very difficult. As a culture, it's very difficult. Something doesn't work, even to your manager or your peer and all, you can go and you should be very truthful and say, this is what I've done. I failed on this. This doesn't work. This is what it is. If you hold, what happens is you're not only hurting your outcome, as a broader organization, you're hurting the organization's outcome. Third is, if you say, if your boss is expecting you to be a perfect person, then you got a wrong boss. You got to look for a different job. Your boss should be in such a way that if the individual isn't coming and saying, I've done 7 things right, but I'm failing on 3 things, that is the job of your boss to help you take care of those 3 things to do it better next time. Right? So that transparency of what works, doesn't work is very important.
Yes.
Right? That gives the productivity. That's my opinion. So there are 2 or 3 things. There are a lot of cultural differences, but if you keep the cultural differences aside, being transparent, truthful is one thing. Being very process oriented and methodical, so you don't waste time. Time is not money. Time is more than money.
Yeah.
More than money, right? So I cannot emphasize enough. But those are few things that
That
we can learn from.
We can learn from. And any very rapid change you found out that could have been like we have it here
I see the next generation adapting to things very well.
in India.
In India,
Okay.
but sometimes what I find, and I may be going slightly out of context, you guys are adapting Western culture so fast without sometimes understanding. You
Yeah.
got to take a little bit time to understand why the hell people kiss with each other on the road. You don't start kissing here, right? Not
Yeah.
that you should not do it. They have a genuine love and affection why they do it, and then the environment doesn't care.
Yeah.
So similarly, here it's not a little social stigma, right? You can kiss in the bedroom, but not outside, right?
Yeah.
So similar, nothing wrong. Western culture has a reason. Like similarly, don't adapt anything blindly. I'm just giving an example, right? Take the good things about it and learn it, and see how you can adapt and make it relevant to you.
Yeah.
Sometimes there'll be things that are not relevant. Just dump them. Don't even use them. They are not necessarily, the West is not necessarily the best
Yeah.
in all the times. We could be better in certain things. So take advantage of that. That's all. I don't know if I answered your question. But
Yeah, it's
That's it.
pretty answered, and I would conclude it as it all matters into the environment we are in. It might be correct to that environment, but it might not be correct to this environment.
Absolutely.
So something might be correct to this environment, which can be not correct to that environment. So we have to orient ourselves to depending upon what environment we are in.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you look at like Japanese culture, they're very, very hierarchical.
Yeah.
They are somewhere in between India and US and all that. You got to tell your parent everything kind of thing, right? Or boss ko har cheez malum rehna chahiye. You got to get an approval and all that. Right? Something like that.
Yeah.
I've seen South Korean dramas and movies. I've been to like I've talked to a lot of this Chinese and Japanese. I had a lot of team members and all that. So the way you deal with different cultures is different,
Mhm.
right? I'll give you take a minute to explain.
Yeah.
I've run a large team. I was doing a project which was close to $480 million worth project.
Mhm.
I did 40% of the architecture and I owned that project. I go to Frankfurt, and because that's a central place, we had people from like 60 plus countries coming in. With a hard lesson I learned that when a Chinese guy comes and sits in the meeting, they will nod head to everything. When they go back to Shanghai, as if we never agreed and we never talked about it. So second or third time, I learned from hard practice that I put everything in writing. We both sign. It is the stupidest thing to do in a private environment.
Mhm.
But then when we go back, I said, this is exactly what we agreed on. Then they will agree to it. Not that I'm suggesting you to do. So you need to understand the culture and all those kind of things. So you need to adapt and say what works in different environments. You need to understand that and learn it.
Okay. So, sir, moving on with the last question, what's your message to all the students and to our Wooble community?
So Wooble community is very good. Stay motivated. You guys are well motivated. If something works, try to appreciate your neighbor, a colleague, and all that you did a good job. Just try to pat on the back. That's important. Keep the team motivation. As an individual, nobody's achieving everything. As a team is what you're doing. Always think about a team concept, and I see that within your team. I really am encouraged. That's one. For general student population, this is your century in India, and it is all up to you to make it, right? You have the China movement like 20-25 years back. But just having the opportunity is one thing, but making good out of that opportunity is a big deal. That's what I would like to see in next 5 to 7 years, how you guys take advantage of that. Education is there, youth population is there, all the metrics are there right now, and the political environment, all the environments are there, right? So it's your decade. See how we can make it. That's what I would say. And the makers are not all the ministers and the chief ministers or other people and all. The executioners are you guys as a youth, right? You have to do it. If you don't do it, they could have dreams, but action is yours.
Nothing at the ground level.
So all the best to all the youth, what I would recommend.
Thank you so much, sir.